the next less than substantive moment from the hearing yesterday. Brett Kavanaugh, one of his assistants, I think she was a former clerk of his. She's now a Republican operative. Zina Bash was sitting behind Brett Kavanaugh over his left shoulder. Zina Bash worked at the Trump White House as a special assistant on regulatory reform and legal and immigration policy. So we don't know if she worked with Stephen Miller, but hard to imagine that you're in the White House and you're talking about immigration and you don't work with Stephen Miller. She currently works as a senior counsel for Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Her husband, John Bash, is a U.S. Attorney in Texas. And it's very odd. There's, there was a picture of Zina Bash going around where she was, it appeared that she was sitting in a way that, for some reason, her hands formed the white supremacy symbol. That is the sort of the OK with the three fingers flared out for white. Now, this is, they have a secret handshake because that's the way you do when you're a white supremacist. That was a tradition that was picked up by the KKK. You want to keep your your identity, and it's a secret society. I saw the picture and I was like, who knows, but unlikely. Now the video though is a little bit weirder. Like, I don't know if Zina Bash is a white supremacist. What I do know from reporting, extensive reporting on the White House, is in the White House, they like to troll. And we also do know from Bob Woodward's book, incidentally, F that guy. We do know that Donald Trump felt like he shouldn't have made some of the, the anti-neo-Nazi speech that he gave, because he just felt like it alienated his supporters.
So stupid.
That doesn't necessarily mean that Donald Trump is a neo-Nazi, but it's a strong indication that he's neo-Nazi-ish enough that he doesn't care about signaling to neo-Nazis.
I roll with those guys.
Non-neo-Nazis, non-fascists, are not just people who don't subscribe to fascism, but also think that fascism is so bad that you shouldn't placate it for your own personal gain. And so you don't necessarily, look, Stephen Miller can be a fascist even though he's a Jew. Stephen Miller could even traffic in some circles like neo-Nazism, even though they don't like Jews, because he doesn't care enough about, he feels protected enough from these people that he finds it valuable to promote stuff with them. There was, we know that the far right in Israel has made common cause with neo-fascists in Europe. That's well reported. We know for years Christian Zionists have made common cause with the right wing in Israel, even though these Christian Zionists, a big part of their support of Israel is that some of the people they're hanging out with and supporting, because they're Jews, are going to end up in eternal hellfire. In fact, 2/3 of them.
Well, they want them all to go to Israel, though, right?
That's why they go to Israel, and that's when the Messiah comes, Jesus returns, and 2/3 of the Jews go to eternal hellfire. The other third get a lucky, get it like a box seat to what happens afterwards. But, and I've heard stories where Israeli military or Israeli right-wing politicians go like, well, look, we'll have that argument later. We're confident we're going to win that argument. In the meantime, there's value in this association. So who you are is not necessarily dispositive of what you might do to promote your agenda. But one never knows. But what I thought was very odd about this video was Miss Bash gets a text and then seems to purposely react to it. I don't know. You be the judge. It's impossible to know. And if it's trolling, it's trolling. And I suspect that maybe like this is...
It's funny how only the super right-wing adjacent trolls like to do this particular troll.
This is what the alt-right likes to do. We know this, right? This is their agitprop, you know.
But what if the Nazis just said the Sig Heil was ironic?
Well, it doesn't matter. Nobody's getting off the hook.
Right.
My point is,
I think some people let him off the hook with that. Like, I saw some people on Twitter saying, no, this is not really what this hand signal means. Like, it means what it means now.
Well, she's either making the hand signal or she's not. And then the question is, if she's making the hand signal, is she doing it because this is going to set off the libs? Or is she doing it because deep in her heart she's a white, a white nationalist, and every time she flashes that symbol, it gives her a warm feeling inside. In between those two things, it really is irrelevant because it has just as detrimental impact. Like, I don't care what's in her heart, one way or the other.
I also think what's interesting is that, people's practices, like what they do does affect and inform their belief. And one of the things that some of the people who've studied the alt-right and these troll cultures have demonstrated is, that what starts as trolling and irony becomes ideological conviction.
Let's watch this video, and I don't know. People can decide for themselves, obviously, but it is interesting.
You wrote that unless guns were regulated, either at the time of the Constitution was written or traditionally throughout history, they cannot be regulated now. In your own words, gun laws are unconstitutional.
She's looking at her phone.
Unless they are, quote, traditional or common in the United States. You concluded that banning assault weapons is unconstitutional because they have not historically
And she goes
been
right
banned.
for the move.
And this logic
And she's
means
looking
that even as weapons
around
become more
like-
advanced and more dangerous, they cannot be regulated.
There is a...
Judge Easterbrook, as you know, a conservative judge from the Seventh Circuit, concluded that reasoning
Yeah,
was
she's
absurd.
gauging the
And
room.
he
Now,
pointed
here's the
out
thing
that
that's
a
interesting
law's
about this,
existence
too. Pause it for a
can't be
second,
the
right?
source.
It's Fox News, so we know what the camera angle is, right? Like, I mean, how many times have you been to a baseball game and you're sitting behind the home plate and you get that call from your buddy, like, dude, you're on TV. Give me the thumbs up.
Right over your left forearm.
Right.
Place.
Yeah, this is like the white nationalist version of that.
Of its own constitutional validity. In fact, I'm left with the fact that your reasoning is far outside the mainstream of
And she
legal
very
thought,
deliberately
and
removes
that
it too then.
surpasses
Yeah, it was
views.
weird, and she looked at her hand as she did that. That was that to me was sort of the weird part. Look, who knows about this stuff? We're talking out of our butts here, but I just think that it's not beyond the realm of possibility.
I like the point that you made yesterday on Twitter, Matt, because her husband, and I don't know if we have it, but
Right. Here it is. And then the husband comes out and he says, the attacks today on my wife are repulsive.
Wah!
Everyone tweeting this vicious conspiracy theory should be ashamed of themselves. We weren't even familiar with the hateful symbol being attributed to her for the random way she rested her hand during a long hearing.
So random.
Now, this is pretty, I guess it's possible. I mean, look, we know there was a huge controversy where Mike Cernovich and that other, whoever it was, I can't remember who she was. Fairbanks were in the White House, standing at the White House press podium, giving this symbol. We know it made a big deal. Maybe they didn't follow that. I don't know. He goes on to write, Xena is Mexican on her mother's side, Jewish on her father's side. She was born in Mexico. Her grandparents were Holocaust survivors. We, of course, have nothing to do with hate groups which aim to terrorize. Okay, so it's just nothing in this, of course, is a direct as anything. No one's saying that she has anything to do with hate groups, right? I mean, it's
Other
just,
than the Trump administration.
right. Some of the Twitter comments have even referred to our baby daughter. That's inappropriate. Of course not. I didn't even know she had
I would have said I had like a small pimple on the inside of my arm that I was like working on.
Well, go up to the
I was
first one.
signaling
I'm
to
very
a mole
like,
that I had info on that.
we weren't even familiar with the hateful symbol being attributed to her for the random way she rested her hand during a long hearing. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
But
No,
I'd say if
make
you
the point that you made, I think is important.
well, basically, like if you want the benefit of the doubt, don't have an entire career where you're working for fascists like Ted Cruz and Donald Trump's immigration.
Yeah, I mean that's
team.
the bottom line. It's the reason that this is even, a 30% valid conversation is because of her associations. If you didn't have if your career wasn't working for the worst people in the country doing racist things and terrorizing communities, this wouldn't even be, I don't know, maybe some random weirdo would be like, what's going on here? It's the pyramid.
Like-
and it wouldn't be like a whole bunch of people, even like us, who have to say, I don't know. I mean, she associates with them. What can you, I'm not saying it is, but I certainly wouldn't discount it.
Working for Ted Cruz and the Trump team's immigration policy is much more white supremacist to me than looking at like edgelord memes on 4chan.
Yeah, or even going to some stupid protest in Charlottesville. And that's what we talked about this on TMBS last night. Steve Bannon's whole premise that he's able to spin that he's not a racist is by, shrinking the bounds of that word so
Right.
radically that it's like, okay, you don't wear a sheet. I guess obviously that means you're MLK.
Well, we were talking about this the other day too, with I forget what guest, but like all the people that are afraid of fascists having a demonstration in Charlottesville don't realize that there is another group of fascists that already has power, which includes the cops, it includes the Trump administration, and that's another thing that we should be pretty scared of.
Yeah, fascism needs to not be thought of as a demagogued population and more like a group of people with power doing malicious things.
And it also reminds me of the DHS blog. Remember when they just happened to post something that sounded an awful lot like the 14 words?
Yeah.
And it's like, no one would be looking for that if they weren't doing fascist things already.
Right.